Hello and welcome to the Craft Beer Corner. For today's review, we are jumping in not to a beer, but to a mead. One of the styles of alcoholic beverages that I love. I mean, I absolutely love. That's not beer and not scotch, but it's been a very long time since we've done a mead, and I found this one that sounded absolutely awesome. Got it from Tavour, as I get a majority of the beers that I review. So today's mead is from a meadery called Misbehavin Mead. This one's called With a Baseball Bat. Clocks in at 12.5% ABV, and this is kind of their mead take on a peanut butter and jelly kind of flavored drink. So I drink a lot of pb&j beers. I thought it might be interesting to see what difference mead makes. This, just as with the last beer, funny enough, we reviewed Misbehavin Meads, is based in Valparaiso, Indiana. So two back-to-back out of Valparaiso. Looks like they've got a nice kind of craft alcoholic beverage scene up there. So label art on this one, it's got crossed baseball bats kind of smashing through a bunch of grapes. And specifically on this one, it is Concorde grapes and peanuts that they added to this. So as per usual with meads, it's going to be corked. It's got a little foil, just like you would see on wine. So we're just going to drill down right into this, and we'll pull that cork right out. Now, I've talked about this, it's been a while, but Tampa, Florida has one of the consistently rated top craft brewers in the country. That's Cigar City Brewing Company. Down in old historic Ybor City in Tampa, they have their Cigar City Meadery, which is just spectacular. Anytime I'm down there, I pop in, and they have ciders, meads. You can their beers on tap as well, but mead is absolutely delicious. It is the oldest alcoholic beverage in the historical record that we know of, and it is made by fermenting honey. So, sniff a cork just like you would with wine. Oh yeah. Wow, that grape and the peanut really jumps out of this, and it smells like a classic mead. So, this one, 12.5%, that's kind of sitting in the average range for a mead. They start where Imperials really get up on beers. That's the typical range on a mead. Some can be a little lower, some can be a little higher. And I think the most recent kind of sort of mead that we reviewed is technically a substyle called Braggot, which is a blend of both honey and barley. So it's kind of like a mead beer or a beer mead, depending upon your perspective. The particular one that I reviewed was unbelievably good. I don't remember the name of it or the brewer, but it was one of the best drinks I've ever had, period. I mean, it was just perfection in a glass. I think it was roughly a quarter honey to 3/4 barley, and it was just pure bliss. So let's check out what this one's about with a baseball bat. Peanut butter and jelly mead. So let's just get this poured. I'm using my nice Delirium Tremens goblet. This works well for myriad styles, and I particularly enjoy it for sours and also meads. It's kind of this nice tulip shape. We'll stop right before the tulip starts to kind of flare to the middle. Mead, drunk at room temperature, just as you would with a red wine. Looks absolutely lovely in the glass. This is a true kind of ruby red color. Obviously, red grapes in this one, Concorde. Those skins are going to impart some lovely color, and it is beautiful in the glass. It's a mead, so it doesn't have a head. It's room temp. It's not carbonated. Let's just give this a good sniff. Wow, yeah. That really does smell a whole lot like a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. I got to tell you, the aroma of those Concorde grapes and the peanuts coming off of this are incredible. It is intense. It really does smell like if somebody just made a big, fat, huge grape jelly and peanut butter sandwich. That's kind of what this smells like. Just massive aroma of the grapes, massive aroma of the peanuts. It smells fantastic. It does smell almost like a liquid grape peanut butter and jelly sandwich in a glass. I cannot wait to dive in. So we're going to do exactly that. Here goes take one. Oh, wow. Oh, man. Okay. Yeah, I see what they're doing with this, and I absolutely get it. I'm on board with this. So the description of a great peanut butter and jelly sandwich in mead form, absolutely a perfect descriptor. This is so boldly Concorde grape and peanut forward. It really does embody the sense of a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, and it is absolutely delicious. So, let's talk about texture here. Meads are a little bit different than beers, but they share a lot of commonality. So, 12.5%, it shares a lot in common with a lot of different imperial styles of beer, like you might expect. There is a good bit of resistance. It's got a lot of ingredients that went into it, both honey and jelly and peanuts, and plenty of volume. It's got the yeast, convert to alcohol. So that's in a nutshell where you can kind of expect this to be. It is not thin by any stretch. 12.5%, that's kind of average range for a mead in my experience, and it's got a good bit of resistance. You can feel it. It's got a thickness to it. In terms of the body on this doesn't feel super heavy though. It doesn't feel weighty. It's not like drinking a big imperial stout at 12.5%. It doesn't feel that oppressive. It feels lighter. I would say overall, compared to say an imperial stout in this ABV range, feels maybe medium. And that's being kind of on the low end of the medium average. It's not a heavy drink. It doesn't feel oppressive, but it has a ton of resistance. So you know there's a lot of fermentables that went into this aside from knowing the ABV, but it's absolutely delicious. And peanut butter or peanuts and Concorde grapes aside for making this peanut butter and jelly sandwich vibe, at its core, it's a mead. So it's made predominantly by fermenting honey. So yes, as with most meads, there is a very distinct honey flavor to it, and it does have that slight honey sweetness. Even though it is fermented, meads in general tend to have more of a sweet side to them than their beer counterparts. That's just the way that it is. It's very much the norm. So this natural inherent honey-like sweetness that comes through in the mead really does a lot to play into the kind of peanut butter and jelly vibe, because the Concorde grapes in here naturally do taste like Concorde grapes because there's this underlying sweetness. So the grape pops out as Concorde grape jelly would. It's sweet. The peanuts too taste distinctly of peanut, but that slight sweetness kind of reminds you of mainstream peanut butters. You're not buying like ground from just raw roasted peanuts and making a natural peanut butter. It's like you're buying Skippy or Peter Pan or any of the big brands. They have a little bit of sugar added. And the reason they do that is because roasted peanuts are very, very roasty and they can get this bitter sense. So a little bit of added sugar cuts through it. It also pops out more the flavor of the roasted peanut. Some are a little more sweet and inclined than others, but that slight sweetness really does accentuate and make this taste far more like a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. It really does put me in the mindset of that. Now meads, because they're fermented with honey, it's fermented honey beverage mixed with the other ingredients. It doesn't have this underlying grain-like quality that you get in a beer. Braggots are different. They do have that. And it's one of the things that, it's a style that bridges the gap for my money. I've only ever had one and it was absolutely incredible. I gave that a perfect score in every category, every measurable. It was just unbelievable. I will never forget that drink to this day. I think it was called Hive Alive. I don't remember the brewer, but unbelievably good. This is kind of putting me in that same vein, just the same level of, man, this is so good. I really should drink more meads than I do. That said, kind of like a lot of beers, you get the peanut butter and jelly sandwich vibe. They've got that underlying cereal-like and kind of crusty bit from the malt bill. That doesn't come through in this. This has really more got the sweet side from the honey that still tastes residually sweet, that's making the grape and the peanut kind of pop out like it's in sandwich form. But there's nothing on this that tastes grainy or crust-like or doughy or bread-like. such that it would give you the actual bread upon which you would build a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. So it's really just the filling, but it's got the spirit of it, and it's absolutely delicious. So I am just going to put a tiny little bit more in here. I think I probably could have gone a little higher. I'm actually going to give it another sniff on this, topping it up a little higher in this tulip. Yeah, it's just peanut and Concorde grape jump right out at you. And you can smell that underlying fermented honey aroma. Meads have a very distinct aroma. You know a mead when you smell it. And this has that. It's just this grape and the peanut addition is just the added bonus on top. It's kind of the core of what they decided to make this one about. So, body and mouthfeel. Body not as heavy as you would expect. Mouthfeel every bit as resistant as you would expect. Flavor just packed. A little bit of sweetness. It just pops right through. So we're going to treat this just like we would any beer review. I'm going to jump back in, going to take a second sip, let everything re-intensify, pick out anything I missed, and we'll talk about the finish. Finishes on meads are a little bit different than you're on your average beer, and we'll talk about that. Take two. Yeah, just a maybe medium body. Nice resistant mouthfeel. As soon as you swallow, it's just this slight warmth and just this big burst of honey-backed sweetness. And then the Concorde grape and the peanut pops right out at you. It really is a beautiful combination of flavors. The balance that they did between the grape and the peanut in the addition of their ingredients into the space mead, absolute perfection. It really, really nails it for being peanut butter and jelly. And I absolutely love it. I love it. This is so good. It's so good. I really don't drink enough meads. Every time I have one, I say that to myself. I really need to start getting my hands on more meads. Thankfully, Tavour has been getting a lot more meads coming down the pipeline. So if you don't have any place to secure good quality mead directly in your neighborhood, you can still use Tavour to do exactly that. So, nothing really new that I got on sip 2. Just got to enjoy another sip of this. It's absolutely delicious. So let's talk about the finish. The finish on a mead puts me a lot more in mind to like how a red or white wine would finish. There's no dryness on this. They tend to be far wetter. Some are a little bit dry, akin to ciders, but most meads are very full and they're very wet. They don't dry out the palate, but they also don't have ridiculously prolonged finishes. Even though they're thick, just the inherent nature of them, they feel like they're coating the palate. They don't linger the flavors on the palate in the same manner that something like, again, I come back to our good friend, the Imperial Stout would do, or a barley wine would do. It doesn't work quite in the same manner. I think part of that has to do with carbonation versus non-carbonation. I don't know the science behind why that's my perception. It could just be me. It could just be a personal perception thing. But in my experience, that's the way it functions. That being said, there are flavors that linger on the palate longer than maybe you would expect. Certainly longer than if you were drinking a glass of red wine, for example. And on this one, it's kind of a combination of equal parts, that honey sweet kind of essence that you get from the base mead and the grapes and the peanuts. So it's kind of equal parts. So it's got a lingering finish. It's just not as long as something like a big Imperial Stout or barrel-aged any kind of beer. And it's more subtle on the back of the palate. But for the purposes of length of a standard finish on a beer, it's not as long. It's not as noticeable. You really got to stop and think about it. It's residual honey, grape, peanut, and it's far less pronounced. Maybe it's not so much the length, it's just the intensity of it isn't as long. See, hops do a lot of things, and one of their main functions is to deliver bitters into a beer, and bitters tend to be one of those flavor sensations that really stick on the palate. This being sweet doesn't last as long. In my experience, that's kind of the dividing factor. So, be that as it may, that's what I experienced, and I absolutely love it. I'm going to say it right here, right now. I will be getting more meads. I'm going to be reviewing more meads. I absolutely love them. They're kind of the distant cousin to beer, what kind of kicked it off the whole fermented beverage thing, and they're absolutely worth your time. If you've never tried a mead, do yourself the favor, get one. They're big, they're delicious, a ton of variety out there. We live in a wonderful time for adult beverages, and meads are no exception. I absolutely love this one. I'm going to take my time, slowly sip on this, come up with my scores. When we come back, we'll get this one ranked from top to bottom. All right, now that we've gotten to enjoy this mead, not beer, we're going to get it ranked. This was Misbehavin Meads with a baseball bat, a mead that had added Concorde grapes and peanuts, clocked in at 12.5% ABV, and Misbehavin Meads is based in Valparaiso. So this got nearly perfect scores in all category, and yes, I am rating based on a mead, not based on a beer here. But the same fundamental principles apply. So the categories where it did not get a perfect 10 out of 10 are firstly the body. It was really just average on this one. Typically the body, even though it's high ABV like on an imperial type beer, on a mead, they tend to not feel that heavy. That's not always the case. Some will feel super light, some will feel very robust. This was just average, so the body on this one did get a 5 out of 10. The other category where it didn't get perfect marks was on the finish. And finishes on meads are kind of all over the board. This one was definitely above average, but I've certainly had some that far and away exceeded it. But above average on this one, and really the driving factor on that extended lingering flavor was just the intensity of the added grape and the peanuts. So their kind of peanut butter and jelly sandwich flavored mead was a great concept, and I think it worked beautifully. Finish on this one did get an 8 out of 10, which meant perfect 10s in all the other remaining categories. That's aroma, taste, mouthfeel, head and retention. It doesn't really apply. Appearance, balance, my subjective thoughts, feeling, and intangible, and example of style. So total score on Misbehavin's Meads with a baseball bat came out to a 93 out of 100. This was an absolutely delicious mead. I've had many meads over the years. I absolutely love them. I don't drink enough of them, and every time I have one, I was like, I really should drink more mead. Thankfully, Tavour's got us covered. They're adding tons of mead options as of late, and it's just great. You know, it's not something you can find just everywhere. So just like we can get our hands on hard-to-find beers, we also can now get our hands on hard-to-find meads, as well as ciders. They have a lot of cider options. So awesome. I absolutely love this one. If you've never tried a mead, I do recommend it. If you're just a beer person, never tried mead, give it a chance. I think you would be very surprised. If you do like mead and you happen to see this one, this is one I do recommend. Absolutely delicious. A mead version of a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, and it was top notch. Folks, that's today's review. As always, I do sincerely appreciate you tuning in today. Please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. If you want to stay in the loop when our videos go live, just turn on your notifications, hit the bell icon. It's right next to the subscribe button. Until next time, keep it beer, keep it craft. We'll see you on the next one. Cheers.